the station covering all of the DMV. This is DC News Now.
Happening now at 6, covering the entire DMV. Wet and windy weather, the rain heading into the DMV. We're tracking the soggy forecast that's coming in. And after the fire, the former DC fire station that went up in smoke overnight, the latest on that investigation. And barred from business.
Business owners have to do what they have to do in order to keep everybody safe.
Local kids and teens are not allowed to shop without an adult present. Live report during the busy gift-giving season.
And with heavy rain moving in, we already have some flood watches in effect for the area for Sunday night, and going into Monday. We'll talk about who's under those flood watches coming up.
And good evening. Thank you for joining us for DC News Now at 6 this Saturday evening. I'm Ben Dennis. An update on that massive fire that ripped through an old firehouse in DC last night. Well, DC Fire says that teams are still on site monitoring that building. You can see the damage done. Meantime, in the video from last night, right here on North Capitol Street off Florida Avenue, that's where the blaze had broke out. Firefighters say the building was under renovation at the time, and flames also tore through a new 4-story building attached to that old firehouse. Firefighters say that some nearby homes were evacuated and over 100 firefighters were on scene. Officials say that nobody was hurt or displaced. And DC Fire and EMS also sharing these old photos of that firehouse. Officials say the building was built back in 1896 during a period of rapid development locally. Officials also say it used to house horse-drawn fire engines. It served as an active firehouse until 1987. And police in the district are investigating after finding human remains in Southwest just this morning. Officials say they found those remains near 2nd and Chesapeake Streets in Southwest. Police say it's a death investigation. We'll keep you updated. And in Virginia, a man is dead after an officer-involved shooting in Stafford County. According to the Sheriff's Department, deputies responded to a disturbance at a home on Richmond Highway near Jason Lane. When they got there, they found a man brandishing a rifle, they say. Deputies say that they repeatedly tried to get the man to drop that gun, but he failed to do it. Deputies then shot at the man. He died on scene. Deputies who were involved have been placed on routine administrative leave. And Arlington County police are investigating a triple stabbing in the stairwell of an apartment building in the Arlington Mill neighborhood just yesterday. Officials say that it happened around 6 p.m. on Columbia Pike near South Frederick Street. Police found a man stabbed on scene. They also found 2 more stabbing victims, including a boy in the nearby area, his age unknown. All 3 victims were sent to the hospital with serious injuries, but right now all 3 patients are in stable condition, injuries considered non-life-threatening. Police believe that a fight broke out between all 5 people, including those victims, before the stabbing. And Arlington National Cemetery has officially wrapped up this year's Wreaths Across America. Officials say that the cemetery saw over 30,000 visitors for the celebration, and those visitors placing around 260,000 wreaths at the sites of graves of our fallen soldiers. Your time is 6:03. Over to Scott Sumner, checking out the weather now. Hey, it's calm right now, but the calm before the storm. Bring us up to speed.
You stole my thunder, and we might have some thunder. Actually, no, it doesn't look to be too thunderous here, but certainly wet here. Today, though, like Ben said, the calm before the storm, dry out there. The high was 61, the low was 35, the average should be 49, and the record high was 74, set back in 1971. We're sitting at 41 degrees right now, under mostly cloudy skies, and if you're not cloudy now, well, you'll certainly see those clouds build across the area. And that's going to lead to tomorrow. We have an aerial flood watch here in effect for all counties hovering the I-95 corridor from Fredericksburg in the Stafford County and Spotsylvania County region, all the way up through the district, to the east of the district, and a little bit west of the district as far as central and southern Loudoun counties here. That's not to say you won't get rain and a decent amount of rain where you don't see the green on the map, but a little less amount of rain there, rain total, as opposed to what we'll see here potentially in the green. And that includes flood alerts here with coastal flood watches as well. Here, this is for Sunday night into Monday at times of high tide. We'll break down those tide times and your 7-day forecast coming up. Ben?
Scott, thank you. Looking forward to it. Meantime, malls and stores are busy this weekend as shoppers take care of holiday gifts for loved ones and friends. But some people are finding it difficult to buy what they want at one DC mall. DC News Now's Dave LaValle joins us live from the DC USA Mall in Columbia Heights. Dave, this is all about recent crime involving young people. We're told the juveniles have to be accompanied by an adult. Tell us more.
Good evening to you, Ben, and we have seen a steady stream of people going in and out of the shopping center behind me all day, and unfortunately some people will not be allowed to go inside the mall. Signs are posted on all entrances. Anyone under the age of 18 is not allowed if they are not accompanied by an adult. Security officers told us off camera the new policy went into effect earlier this week to reduce juvenile crime that has taken place not only here but around the district. Mall managers have not responded to our request to comment on the new policy, but shoppers did talk to us, and those that did have mixed reaction to unaccompanied minors not being allowed in the mall.
If I'm 17 years old and if I want to buy something for my mom, I'm not going to do much. So I don't think it's a good idea, you know.
I think given the area that's, what's going on in this area and the climate in this area right now, I think the stores and business owners have to do what they have to do in order to keep everybody safe.
Security officers did not tell us how they will check someone's ID to make sure they are at least 18 years old. Maryland's The Mall in Columbia adopted a similar policy back in March because of unruly teen behavior. We're live in Columbia Heights. Dave Laval, DC News Now.
Our thanks to Dave. Metro riders, listen up. Major cuts to service across the DMV could happen if their funding gap isn't addressed. The gap is in the hundreds of millions of dollars. WMATA is working to close that $750 million budget deficit. The agency says that the cuts would close certain Metro stops, severely impacting the region. Here's some of the changes Metro is suggesting to save money next year. 10 rail stations would completely close down. All stations that stay open would close at 10 p.m. every night. Fares, parking fees, they would jump by 20%. Wait times would also increase. The number of Metro bus service lines would be cut in half, and the agency would lay off more than 2,200 employees.
You're talking about a group of workers who stood up in 2020 throughout this entire pandemic. And then you're talking about laying them off. And the only thing that I can say is shame on this region.
Metro says that stations with lowest ridership this winter would shut down if this plan goes through. And after a tree trimmer was killed while working on the side of 495 in Silver Spring on Wednesday morning. There's an increased focus in Maryland on making work zones safer. The lieutenant governor is outlining steps the Moore administration is ready to take. Daniel Hamburg shares what lawmakers are planning to help avoid those tragedies.
57-year-old Eric Lewis of D.C. is the latest victim of a work zone crash. The foreman of a tree trimming operation here on I-495 hit and killed by a truck driver who drove away.
It's really heart-wrenching, Daniel.
Lieutenant Governor Aruna Miller says right now there are over 300 construction zones across the state with more than 1,000 workers.
And so far to date, we've had over 1,100 crashes in the state of Maryland.
Miller says better advertising and education are at the top of things to improve.
We're talking about making sure we go into our schools, teach kids early on, making sure in the driver's manual we talk about the move over law.
Maryland's move over law requires all drivers to make a lane change or slow down when passing a stopped vehicle with hazard lights or warning signs. Violating the law carries a $110 fine and a point on your license. She wants to see better enforcement. Right now in Maryland, when you speed through a work zone,
the citation amount is $40. It is the lowest in the nation. There are some states like Texas, it's up to $1,000.
Miller says it will take a culture shift to change driver behavior, but it's necessary to protect workers.
All of us need to come home to our loved ones, and we each have a responsibility to make sure that happens.
Our thanks to Daniel for his reporting. Meantime, the Arlington chapter of the NAACP is calling for a federal investigation into the Arlington County Detention Center. The organization says that 9 inmates have died at the jail in the last 8 years, including one inmate found unresponsive in his cell on Wednesday. The president of the NAACP chapter says in part the Arlington County Sheriff's Office and other county leaders have been unwilling or unable to properly address the root problem. He adds the death rate is accelerating and the conditions inside the jail remain inhumane and unsatisfactory. We've reached out to the jail for comment and have not yet heard back. In this week's news, that a deal is in place to move the Washington Capitals and Wizards to Virginia out of D.C. It stunned the DMV and the sports world. The teams have called Chinatown home for almost 3 decades. And while Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin and Monumental Sports and Entertainment majority owner Ted Leonsis spoke, quote, definitively on the project, spoke quite definitively, rather, D.C. leaders say that this isn't a done deal. Haley Milon is breaking down the timeline from the newsroom.
This is far from being a done deal. So much must fall into place first. And while the news came as a big surprise to sports fans and the DMV alike this week, Monumental Sports and Entertainment majority owner Ted Leonsis has been talking to lawmakers about this for months. It started this summer when discussions began between Governor Glenn Youngkin and Ted Leonsis. Then Alexandria City Council members say they've been exploring the project for weeks, which brings us to Wednesday, the announcement of the deal. However, hours before, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser made a last-minute pitch to keep the teams in D.C., offering $500 million to modernize the Capital One Center. And now we learn the Metro Authority wasn't a part of the process. There is still a lot that needs to be figured out. Metro is considering closing 10 stations amid budget troubles. If they did that today, Potomac Yard at the proposed stadium site would be one of them. Then we get to the land itself. The site belongs to developer JBG Smith. Governor Glenn Youngkin is asking the Virginia General Assembly to form a Virginia Sports and Entertainment Commission. The authority would purchase the land from JBG and sell bonds. Officials say the project will be paid for in full by the incremental project revenues. The deal requires a number of infrastructure investments from Monumental, the state of Virginia, and the city of Alexandria, though officials haven't said what those investments will be. 2025 is when the organizers hope to break ground on the project. On the sports side, the NBA and the NHL will need to approve the move. If all that happens, the teams could be playing at the new site as early as 2028. And of course, all of this is subject to change. Virginia lawmakers and Monumental Sports and Entertainment only have a verbal agreement in place, and Leonsis has not yet responded publicly to DC's last-minute offer. From the newsroom, Haley Milon, DC News Now.
Thanks to Haley. Some people say that they were blindsided by that announcement. One group, known as Moms Against Monumental, say that the money should go to schools instead of arenas. Others argue that the deal is not economically wise for the area and plays tax jurisdictions against each other.
It brings tons of things that upset this balance that we have achieved, and so we're pushing back. And also the process. Like, there was no transparency. They just come in and drop this bomb on us.
There's plenty of economic activity here. The idea that a stadium is some sort of magic fairy dust, point me to the economic activity that surrounds FedEx Field. Look at the situation that's happening in Chinatown right now. There's plenty of hockey games, plenty of basketball games, and businesses are leaving.
That proposal will become official if and when the General Assembly and City Council sign off on the plan.